And we are back at the booth. I have my model Paula that we did yesterday. This beautiful platinum retouch that you can see right there. Obviously, still in its raw form. Hasn't been toned yet, and we're gonna get to that. But I thought first we'd try a little different, something that we haven't done yet on our stage. And I'm gonna do a nice blunt haircut, because for me, nothing speaks expensive blonde more than a good platinum with a sharp haircut. And I love to see these just laying straight, very sleek, and that's what we're going to try to do here. So I'm actually using the Arc Paragons, which they are here as well. So if you're at the show, make sure that you pop over, check them out. These are fantastic precision cutting shears, right? So it's just they're 100% made in Japan. Great metal and technology on these. And this is going to help me to create a really good blunt line. So what we want to do when we're trying to create a really sharp blunt line is we want to make sure that we have even saturation first off, right? Before anything else, make sure that the saturation is the same. You don't want it to be drier here and more wet here. You're going to create inconsistencies in the haircut. This is going to give us a chance to get us nice and sharp. So I make sure that the dampness is equal throughout, and also that my tension is the same throughout. So I'm going to comb through it a few times, and notice how I like to go through and just give that root a good tap. What that's doing is all those little hairs underneath that maybe aren't going in the same direction, we're pulling them in so they're part of the party here, and we can get it nice and smooth before I create that first cut. So once I get this all kind of grouped down nice and even, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting. Now, notice the position that I have her head. It's angled slightly forward. Keep that in mind when you're cutting, right? Because if I come up too high, that's going to create a much more dramatic short to long finish. I don't want that. I want it to be more squared. So what I'm doing is I'm looking on my corners here, and I want to see where my shorter points are, and I don't want to go any shorter than that. That's already going to create a short to long. So really, we're only taking off maybe like an inch. That's it, like max, about this much. Just want to clean it up. A little dusting, if you will, just to sharpen it up and give her a really good line that we can really accentuate later when we're taking her after photos. So I like to go in, no comb or anything, natural fall. Make sure that it's a nice flat surface that we're cutting on. So sometimes I'll just kind of pull on that a little bit and then find my mark, right? I can see it from the inside of my blade here. And these really just kind of almost do the work for me. But it's really important when you're doing this that you have a solid cutting position. What I mean by that is you need to make sure that your hand, your wrist, your elbow, everything's in perfect alignment so that you don't accidentally start going this way or this way, right? We want that line to stay nice and straight and blunt. So if you lose it a little bit, no worries, come back through. Now, another reason that I always have my clients tilt their head down for that initial cut is if you've ever seen, a haircut that someone does, right, where they have a really nice perimeter and they cut it with the head up in a natural position, but if that person looks down, you see like all of this hair from underneath kind of pushing back up. That's what happens if you don't do this first. So I like to do this first, and then I'll have her tilt her head up, and I'll check my line. Make sure I don't see any stragglers kind of falling back through underneath here. I know that I've got a good line to be able to build off of, and now I can drop my next sections, and everything else that I'm gonna do, we're gonna go from a natural position, right? Because it's really just those underneath ones that we wanna make sure that we're getting in that case. It happens way too often. I see it a lot. You know, somebody does this movement, or sometimes even straight up, and you just see that long hair pushing back through the underneath. So that's going to help to make sure that you just don't have that issue at all. Now, when I'm taking my sections, I try to just make sure I stay behind the ear forward, because we want that to be separate. What we don't want to do is bring from up here back and not factor in the ear. Because if we're cutting a more blunt line and we don't factor in that ear, what we'll do is we'll get a skip. I know you know what I'm talking about. You've probably seen it yourself. If you're going for a sharp bob, and it's like really nice line, and it goes whoop, like a little hiccup just happened. We're gonna avoid that by staying behind the ears when we take our back section. When we move to the side, I'm gonna show you how to factor that in so that you don't get that skip, okay? The other thing I like to do is once I've moved into anything beyond my perimeter line, my base line here, I switch from using the fine side of my comb to the wide tooth side of my comb. The reason for that is because I'm not trying to keep super tight tension. I want a more lived-in bob with a sharp line. And I'll be able to create that texture by keeping it a little looser through here, and then when I finish, I can go through and I can point cut and soften those lines out a little bit more. So I would love to know like where everyone's tuning in from. You know, I've got Cynthia here helping me out behind the camera. So if you hear a VOG there, that's Cynthia. And of course, you know, I introduced my model Paula. She's actually a longtime client of mine. You could say at this point we're friends at this point, right? I just want to make sure before I say it and she doesn't agree, but I'm pretty sure we're friends. We like a lot of the same stuff, so I'm going to group us into a friend category.
Connecticut.
Connecticut? Cool. Is there anyone who's here, like, at the show, who's just, like, watching everything happen at once between their phone on IG and, like, the stage presentation? Because that's kind of cool. Boston? Central
California.
All right.
Sarasota, Florida.
Hey, that's where I grew up. Shout out
Baltimore.
Sarasota. We're all over the place. I love
Utah.
it. Any international people, that's the picture right there.
Naples, Florida.
Naples, right down the road. Well, not really. It's a drive from here. But
Alpharetta, Florida.
I don't even know where that is.
Indiana.
You're gonna have to let me know. Okay, so here, right? Looser finish. You can see how it's a little bit softer now. What we're doing here. This combing with the wide tooth side versus the fine tooth side, it already starts to open this up. So what I want to do is I want to get it pressed flat, and I want to see where my line is, and now I'm going to switch. Instead of going in and creating blunt, I'm going to soften that line out and point cut the whole way through. Oh, look, I almost messed myself up. Alright, so notice I want to see everything falling straight down. I don't want to comb and over direct anything to the middle. And once I see that the way that I want, I can go through and I can point cut my line. Okay, now we want to cross check. Very important, especially when you're doing any kind of precision work. Constant cross-checking is very important. You don't want to have one line start going too far one way or the other line and not know at what point it started to do that. Because what's going to happen is you're going to keep building onto that mistake and it just snowballs. It gets out of control. So we're just going to pull here. What I like to do is I'll grab the sections that I'm working with, I'll bring them to the middle, and then I will actually step back. So I physically take a step back and just see that they fall at the same time. What I don't like doing is pulling without stepping back. If I pull, then I could pull at different times. So that's why I like to just step back and let my body do the work for me. I know that my whole body's moving back together. Pretty good there. I'm gonna check the interior. Again, bring it down to a point. We're good. I got a couple of little, oh no, that's just loose hair. We're good.
Question, love the apron. Where is it from?
Bam! What? Look at that. You didn't see that. Oh, this one. Never mind. I thought you meant this. This one's great too. This is Joyco, and this is Victory. I misread that one completely. Yeah, I need a sponsorship, actually. That's what we're going to do next.
Michelangelo said, where's Richard Mana? He's walking around here.
He's somewhere in here.
Just Happy Hair. Just Happy Hair said she's here in spirit.
Awesome.
Alter Ego said, hey, Ricardo.
Oh, Michelle, hey, what's up?
We have someone here from Chile. Worcester, Guadalajara, Mexico, Italy, Alberta, Houston, Texas, Sonora, California, Brazil, Atlanta.
Brazil, finally, we got an international.
Where you get that cute?
All right.
That one.
I don't even know. I'm trying to get these myself. Don't tell anybody. Okay, so we're going to move into the sides. This is the tricky part. This is the part I was talking about before. When we're working on the sides and we're trying to carry that line over, we have to factor in the ear, right? The dreaded ear. This is where things get lost. Also, keep in mind, this area behind the ear is the finest point in the head. Outside of the recession, right here is the finest point. So you have the least amount of density, which means it is not forgiving. This will tell on you if you mess it up, right there. So what I want to do is comb this down. Again, we're doing that perimeter. So I'm going to make sure that I'm using the fine tooth side. When I move up, I'll switch to the wide tooth side. And then what I like to do is I will ask my client or model to turn and look to the side. Okay. Now what that's doing is this is giving me a flatter cutting plane to work on. So I can let the hair hang and I don't have to worry about the shoulder getting in the way. So once I've done that, I look for my guide right here. So really in the front, we're not taking a ton, right? We're just gonna kind of clean this up through there. That's maybe about 1/2 inch. You can see it right under the blade. But what we wanna do is as we're combing through, again, keeping it really smooth. Tap, tap, tap. Right there, okay? And once it's all laying nice and smooth, then I'm gonna come in and I'm just gonna tap above the ear, right here. And you see what that's doing down here also? That's giving me a little lift. So now all of a sudden my line is already looking uneven, but that's what I want. I want that to be factored in, and then at the end, once it's dry, is when I can go through and really polish that line off. But by bumping that up, now I can cut a straight line. And I'm just using the very tip of the blade on this. Okay, that's it. But that already just gave me a much more blunt finish. Now, if I wanted to, I could square it up and go up a little bit higher. I'm gonna keep it just slightly forward right here because I wanna give myself a little extra length to work with later once I dry it in case I need to touch anything up.
Question, is it true that too much protein can break the hair?
You can over-proteinize the hair, absolutely. It is a thing. It will cause the hair to get brittle. But that's why I say it's always important to make sure you have a balance of protein, which is your strength, and moisture, so something to hydrate. So hydration and strength is what you want a good balance of. Between those two, your hair is always going to be in good shape, right? But there is such a thing as too much of a good thing. All right, so we're just, again, now I've switched to the wide tooth side. Now remember I said in the back, I like to make sure that this is falling straight down, right? I don't over direct. The one exception to that rule is right here. You see where the head breaks right here from the apex? We take like an inch forward and then you have a steep drop off, and that's the round of everyone's head. You have to factor that in because if you cut straight across through here, that line, when it comes back here, it's gonna end up being way off. So for that, this is the only area that I will over direct back slightly, just to give myself a little extra wiggle room. Now, I'm just gonna go back through, comb, 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 make sure it's nice and even, and I'm just gonna check my ends, see if there's anything that we need to touch up. Again, factoring in the ear, and there's just a few little ends right here. Nothing crazy, because there's minimal layering in her hair, and that's it. Just the cleanest of dustings. But when this is dry, she's gonna have such a nice, clean, sharp line, and that's what we want to see. Right? I'm gonna spin her this way. We're gonna do the same thing on this side. So I'm dropping here. We're gonna take about halfway through. And we'll pin this up. As you can see, we have a lot of activity happening here at the booth. We have lots of little giveaways, a lot of new products that are launching right now. We've got next month a whole new restage of our Blonde Life category, which is fantastic. Amazing products. If you haven't used them yet, our lightener is going to give you tons of lift. But the best thing for me is finally bringing back a balayage clay lightener. I've been missing it so bad, and I'm excited for us to get that back again. Plus, all the new Blonde Life toners, which I'm about to get into as soon as I finish this section right here. So, repeat, right? She's here, I want her there. She's gonna look that way. See, look, I don't even have, she did it. She looks that way. Fine tooth side, we're working perimeter. I'm gonna clean this up really well. All right, take the shear, give that a tap, flatten that out right to the top of the ear. And you see, the ear's gonna push that back out, and that way we don't end up with that skip. It stays like that because my moisture is the same everywhere. And then I'm gonna find my line, and I'm gonna connect through. And something to keep in mind when you're cutting, the majority of the work that you do is going to sit in that last half inch to an inch of the blade. Like any cutting that you do further in from that, the more into the point of the blade or the joint of the blade, the more it's going to push the hair through. So when you work through just the tips of it, then you get a nice sharp line. One more time, just to make sure we're all good here. And to make sure Austin gets a good picture. Here for you, buddy. Right here. That was it. There's just a little bit right there. I got that cleaned up. We're good to go. I can drop this. Again, I don't think there's going to be a lot to clean up there. We can run this down. Sorry, the party's starting now. Now it gets real. Again, we're going to over-direct this back slightly, right, just at the front. Just bring this back a little bit.
Ladies and gentlemen, a message from our sponsor.
Selection has passed, and the website is continues to
It's like a pose.
My favorite thing. Okay. The haircut, for the most part, at this point, we're done. As far as the perimeter goes, anything that I do outside of that, detail-wise, I'm going to do that once I've dried it. And that, for me, that's really important. Haircuts should be twofold. You should build it